I'm Mark A. Bell. This is the August 2nd meeting of the Grants and Data Committee of the Athens in Motion Commission. Joining me are Daniel Sizemore from staff and Jake Moss, an ex officio member of the committee. The agenda is, I think it's available online, but if, let me just you want me to share my screen and show the agenda so we can?
Yes. Yeah, did you get the one that I sent? Or that I posted online?
You posted something different from what I sent you, then I don't have it. I can look for it. Just give me a second.
Here, I have it pulled up right here. I put it together
Okay, I don't have it.
earlier this morning, so
Oh, okay.
let's see. So I just have for grant discussion 15 minutes. Sorry, there we go. Talk about Safe Streets for All, reconnecting communities, bridge improvement grant, and then that leaves us the rest of the hour and 10 minutes to talk about the project prioritization formula and criteria.
Okay.
Everyone heard me say that I can only stay for the grants part, right?
Yeah, funny guy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
right.
I was serious. I did not expect this hour and 10 minutes thing.
I didn't either. Frankly, I didn't either. I haven't seen this yet, so this is news to me. Hopefully,
you're not saying it's actually an hour and 10 minutes. You're saying that's the rest of the time.
I just put the rest of the time there, and I think between us three, we can really figure out how we want this timeline to break down. So if you would like some adjustments to the agenda, we could definitely do that.
Let's just go for it and give it the time it needs and no more. So you want to start off with the Safe Streets for All grant?
Yeah. So I think last time we talked, I mentioned that we're just doing the action planning grant and not implementation.
Right. This is the new funds from the infrastructure bill.
Right. Yes. So we received our applications for the Vision Zero coordinator position this morning, and so this will be essentially what we're going to ask for in the action planning grant is $250,000 towards the development of that Vision Zero plan. Also tonight is the vote to approve the Vision Zero resolution that was put forth. So the mayor and commission have that on the consent agenda. So once the meeting gets going and they vote on the consent agenda, then we will have an official Vision Zero resolution. From there, I think we have another $750,000 worth of room in the grant. We could go as simple as just Vision Zero plan. Please give us $250,000, but we can also do supplemental plan activities, which can include data gathering or some other improvements or funds to actually get a set of tactical urbanism library, basically.
Right.
For pilot projects. We could essentially break it down. So I guess my question is kind of like when we start exploring what some of these, I'm curious to get feedback from y'all because we've got 2 more weeks before technical questions end, and then it's 6 weeks out from grant submission. I haven't really been able to put together a scope for what we're going to be applying for, so it's kind of going to be a little rushed, but the narrative for the action planning grant is like 300 words, and it's mostly most of the application is just here are all the things that we currently have. Here's our 300-word narrative showing why we need this funding and why this is important to us. And they're really going to be looking at the data to determine who needs this the most based off of fatalities and per 100,000 residents.
Now, if I recall correctly, we did have on a per capita basis, based on the GDOT 2019 bike safety report, it was a statewide, that we were the leading county among the ones they listed for either bike or pedestrian fatalities. And that was over a 10-year period. So that would be a good thing to be able to access or refer to.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And we also have the data to show, I mean, last year was our highest on record for 2021. So I think our data would also speak for itself. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
good.
aside from that, I guess I'm wanting to kind of get a feel for what we could potentially add in as the supplemental action planning
So
items.
currently it's 2.5 million, and you've identified 250,000 for the
It's
Vision Zero
1
coordinator.
million
It's
max.
one. I thought you said 2.5. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, so 250,000 for the position for the plan or for the position.
For the plan.
This is not going to pay for the position itself, is it?
No, that's been funded by out of our operations budget with the county. So
Okay.
we are
Okay.
approved to have that.
Yeah. So what are the options? What kinds of things would they, you know, want to
So
see? Develop a safety action plan, conduct planning, design and development and support, carry out projects and strategies. Okay.
data is one that I would really like to do.
Mhm.
I think we could probably do, 1 to 3 years of like streetlight data, which would
Mhm.
give us like all of the ridership metrics. And
Streetlight being the system that automatically counts bikes and pedestrians. Is that
no,
correct?
so that would be Grid Smart. That's one of the other options. So streetlight data is a platform that uses big data. It's a transportation analytics platform that uses like location-based data from cellular devices, different apps.
Okay.
They don't actually collect the data itself, so there's no personal
Right.
data attached to it. It's all basically purchased from a
So they're
third
mining
party.
that big data. Okay. All right.
So basically, it would allow us to have unlimited zones. Like it's like $100,000 a year. So we
Mhm.
could say $300,000 over the course of 3 years. They're gonna put together a scope for some information, like because they're offering, because this is a pretty common thing that people are asking for. They're
Mhm.
putting together. They're helping with proposals to fill in some of that. So
Okay.
that's one of the aspects that we're looking at.
Okay.
Another one is Grid Smart, which is that is currently our network of cameras at intersections that currently just mostly does the actuation of the signals. So um, in some locations, there will be the bars in the ground that when you drive over them, it activates the signal. In other locations, it's actually based off of a camera that's watching, and whenever a vehicle enters into a box that's been determined, it then triggers it to actuate the signal.
So
Um,
that's better for bicycles, right?
yeah, and that's really good for bikes. And there's also the capability of actually doing counts of vehicles. You can set it up to count data. So my request to Cubic, which is the company that makes Grid Smart, is they're going to be helping me put together kind of some information. So in the same way that Streetlight is doing this, they would
Mhm.
put together kind of a narrative, and here's where we're at, and here's where we want to be with Grid Smart, and how much that would cost.
So you're talking about creating the Vision Zero plan, data acquisition using these two different platforms. Are there any specific projects or specific planning, planning for specific projects that's part of this? Like the Millage Corridor, for example, or, I don't know. I mean, some of the less safe, identifying an unsafe corridor. Or is that beyond the scope of what we could do with this?
So what we could do is I could get an inventory of all of the road safety audits that we've done and the long-term projects. So for instance, Tallahassee Road had some long-term recommendations that requires like a fair amount of funding. We could actually also apply to implement some of our road safety audit projects. So that could be on Tallahassee Road. I think there's some down on Whitehall. There's a whole, there's like going back several years, they've been doing road safety audits out of traffic engineering. So really it would be like, here are all our road safety audits. Here are the projects that were identified at the time as to what needed to be done. And here are the things that we couldn't do because of lack of funding. And so,
Okay.
and we do have funds that we could use as matching for that if matching is required.
So do we have an action plan in place? Do they consider the Athens in Motion plan our action plan?
So unfortunately, one of the things that was a non-negotiable that the reason we're switching from implementation is um, the Athens Emotion Plan is almost the action plan. We did, they did not look at safety.
Mhm.
And the whole main purpose of this, which is kind of non-negotiable, is it needs to have looked at safety analytics and, high injury networks and those kind of things.
Yeah, that is an odd omission, I guess, thinking about it, but can't do everything. So
Well, and I'm hoping that, and part of the discussion later on will be how can we incorporate safety and actually incorporate that into the Athens Emotion
yes,
process.
absolutely. I fully support that.
Like level of comfort kind of speaks to safety, but not in the way that they want.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And that's how it's currently phrased in there is level of comfort is the input for safety. And then so is the proposed project. So if there was a Sharo if the proposed project was Sharo's, it's not going to give as much of a safety improvement, obviously. In fact, it might be negative safety improvement, but
Yeah.
Right.
but a separated facility versus a delineated bike lane,
Mhm.
those are two kind of different extremes. So yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at on Safe Streets for all. In terms of like,
Do you need any? I'm sorry. Just do you need anything from us, or do you need anything that would require discussion with the full commission?
I think I'm just curious what your opinion would be on do we get a bunch of funding for
Mhm.
getting access to data and making our data gathering and getting like counters and stuff like that? Or do we focus on the road safety audits and see how far we can make some money go with the road safety audits? Or do we kind of work towards maybe the pilot program development where we would, be buying some stuff that could be temporarily installed and like basically like the summertime bike routes.
Yeah,
Where,
tactical urbanism kind of stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like that idea. I don't know how clearly it fits in with the planning grant, but it seems like you could make an argument that it's part of the planning process is these pilot projects, and having this library available would help us take the next steps on some of the plans. But I like that. I guess I don't know, Jake. I'm curious what you think, but putting like 300,000 into Grid Smart and 300,000 into Streetlight or something like that seems a little heavy on the data analytics side of it. I don't know.
Is that how much it would be?
300. I mean, we could do 100,000 for Grid Smart or for safe Streetlight, and that would just be a year.
Mhm.
I know Transit is also looking to like we're all looking for different ways to buy access to it, and so like right now I'm working on getting some buy-in from a few partners so that we could do 50,000 for 6 months, and I'm hoping that Leisure Services and Transit can kick some money in. We've got some money set aside for it, and that will give us access to the data now, so that I could actually use it in our Athens in Motion plan
So,
now.
I mean, is there much to be gained by getting 3 years of data over what you learned from 1 year? Are the years that different year to year, in terms of the patterns and the frequency and stuff? It
And
seems like there's
they're
diminishing
also
returns.
expanding their tools and stuff too each year, so it's kind of. I mean, and Transit said that they got permission from GDOT to apply for to wrap that into their 2024 fiscal year funding. So we could potentially have it like if we get it now for 6 months, and then when 2024 rolls around, Transit would be paying for it, and then by the time we find out whether we get this grant, that could get us an extra year, and then that could stage us well to be ready for the implementation grant, which could continue to get more access to that data.
That's what I was going to say. The real purpose of it. So it's nice to have collateral benefits of having Streetlight for a while and being able to use that data for whatever. the real purpose is to position ourselves to write a successful implementation grant. So thinking about what that, we did think about what that looks like because we thought we were going to do it. But thinking about what the implementation grant is going to look like, where we want to be at the end of the implementation grant period, and then determining, working backwards to say, well, what is the most valuable thing to do with this action planning grant in terms of what will enable us to make the strongest argument for the implementation grant.
That makes
That's
sense.
very abstract, but that is
No,
my,
it
I
makes
work on
sense.
a
I
lot
mean,
of projects like this.
I mean, the whole point is to set us up for the implementation grant. So if it would help to know what's going to be most useful for that.
Okay. So then,
I mean, you even had it sort of, well, you didn't have it partly written, but you had some stuff written.
yeah, it included like a safe routes to schools plan development for 50,000, a wayfinding plan development for 50,000. Like, I had it broken down if it was 30 million. So
So, I mean, it sounds like, I mean, usage data would be really useful for both of those things. So you could identify various routes to schools and be able to specifically call out places where that would really need to be implemented. The weird thing about that implementation grant is you don't have to, you have to talk about projects in that you have to give them an idea of what the dangerous areas in your city are, but you're not committing to carrying out any particular projects. Like you don't budget for, we're going to improve safety on Atlanta Highway with this grant. So that flexibility both makes it, kind of neat because you can, and if things change or priorities change, politics change, whatever, you can pivot when you have the actual grant. But it also makes it so that it's a little hard to figure out what to present in the proposal because you're not actually singling out individual projects that you're committing to carry out.
yeah. We could also, one thing that we could do is, oh shoot, what was it gonna? I had an idea that popped up while you were saying that. Oh, we could ask for partial funding to do like the public engagement portion of the Athens in Motion plan rewrite, because I did get a quote back from the consultant. The whole like really hit the ground, interactive map, tons of public feedback. Like there's a lot of stuff that we could do to get robust public input and not just say, hey, comment where you have an issue. Like we could basically repeat the process that we did in 2016 for this round of the Athens in Motion plan redevelopment. So as part of this, we can say, hey, our bike and pedestrian master plan checks a lot of these boxes, and part of this action planning grant could go towards a more in-depth safety study for that plan, plus public engagement.
And maybe
robust
updating the equity data as well, or getting additional equity data, because that's going to be,
That's a review.
that's one of the things they mentioned. So, we had data that was used for the equity component of that formula, but that can always be better.
Yeah. Do you know how much? I mean, I guess I could get a price for what that would be, but I figure if I set aside like 100,000 for the Athens motion plan revisions, is that crazy?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Is that it for SS4A?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. The next grant on here is the Reconnecting Communities. So this is a $5 million grant. People who get raised projects end up being prioritized slightly higher. So this is kind of, this is focusing on bridging those man-made gaps. It can't be like a river. So like, for instance, where the loop has divided a neighborhood.
You share again. I don't have the
Yeah,
that version of the agenda. Sorry.
no problem. So reconnecting communities.
Gotcha.
And let me see.
Like where there's been a freeway built through an urban area and separating a historic community, like a historically Hispanic community, for example, or something like that. Is that what
Exactly.
this is aimed at? Yeah.
Yeah. So the Reconnecting Communities pilot program. Let me get, this is the NOFO here. So this is due at October 13th. I'm not leading this one, but I am on the grants team for it. I need some time to not constantly be writing grants. You guys know how that is.
Yeah, TPW is doing it. Is that who's taking the lead?
Yeah, but yeah, it is TPW. It's I think Julia, she's a project coordinator
Okay.
with in the admin, so one of my coworkers. So yeah, the NOFO is here. We have some meetings coming up to talk about it, but there are two types of grants here. There's planning grants for the study of doing these things, and then other capital construction, which is that's to carry out a project to remove, retrofit, mitigate, or replace an existing eligible facility with a new facility that reconnects communities. So,
Do we have an idea which corridor you're going to apply for?
so one thing that makes a lot of sense, since it is one of those things where if we get a raised grant, if we get North Avenue awarded, then we could potentially use the funds to help basically GDOT has already agreed to program the rebuilding of these bridges and to allow for multi-use paths on those bridges over the loop.
Right.
Because right now, and I think this is a spot where it's just very clearly in need of, this is your classic,
Right.
like, this is absolutely a barrier.
Yeah.
And so,
You can walk under that.
yeah, your knees are like up here. Um, so GDOT has committed to programming the replacement of these bridges, but really, like, we could essentially extend up, get the multi-use path up and along, and really reconfigure this interchange so it's not so confusing. Because this is one of the worst.
It is a horrible interchange.
It's terrible. I
Yeah.
think they were like, hey, what if we just did a bunch of, I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is just a really confusing area. There's no signals really, so does not work. But once they replace that, so that's a $14 million bridge replacement that they have programmed. We don't know when it's going to happen, but they said if we get the raise grant, then we could actually, they'll work with us on that.
They might
There's also,
prioritize it sooner if we get the raise grant.
exactly.
Okay.
There's also an extension from Trail Creek Trail here across the railroad and up to this corridor
Could you
where the Boys and Girls Club.
Shoal Creek Trail?
No, Trail Creek Trail.
Oh, Trail Creek Trail.
Yeah.
Where's there an extension?
So basically, there is some funding in the 2023 SPLOST program,
Okay.
T-SPLOST program for a greenway extension, and it would connect Virginia Walker Park and East Athens up and over to 4th Street. This is Gospel Pilgrim Cemetery here.
Right.
And so we could essentially kind of utilizing that potential crossing and connection, we could then connect from our North Avenue project, which is there's a multi-use path coming here. We could link that. So I'm just thinking that there are several options in North Avenue area to kind of expand not just the multi-use path on the corridor, but then how do you expand out into other neighborhoods to help bridge those gaps?
Isn't there a school over there somewhere too?
Yeah, Howard H.B. Stroud.
Okay, there it is. Okay. Yeah, it's my old polling place. Yeah.
Then there's also a project that was put forth as a T-SPLOST project that would be a multi-use path along from the end of our project on Rays up Boley and connect it to the Greenway here.
Mm-hmm.
So that would then tie those together. And then I think as part of that, they also put in like a transit transfer station up here, which would then allow extension of transit access up onto 441, which currently does not have transit access.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some other spots around town. Those are all the ones that are specifically around like North Avenue. And with it only being $5 million, you know, we got to kind of choose which one we want to do.
Sure.
But we can apply for up to 3.
Okay. Well, let us know when you learn more about which corridor or which specific project, whether you're going to go for planning or implementation, you know, just
Yeah.
kind of keep us informed at maybe at the meeting. And
Cool.
another thing, back to the safe streets, just for 1 second. Once you do have a budget, you know, fleshed out, feel free to, you know, run it by us or you know, just if you don't mind, if that's
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, good.
One thing I would say about that reconnecting communities one is that Athens has some dumb stuff. But in terms of competitiveness, there are so many cities in this country with much dumber stuff that they did in terms of building freeways and
Yeah.
severing communities that
Yeah.
we're going to have to make a strong case, probably in terms of the large disadvantaged population we have. Because I bet that there are just really, like New Orleans, for example,
Right.
nightmarish situation with their
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a freeway in LA that would qualify, you know, things like
Huh.
that. Yeah, I mean, I
And
think you're right. This is one that's going to be very competitive, especially with only 200 million in total funding. Or 100.
yeah, I think it's 200 and 150 million towards so it's 150 I think towards the capital
Mhm.
and maybe 50 or 45 for the planning.
And the plannings are up to 1 million.
2 I think
So
2 million.
so there'll probably be about 30 of them, 20 to 30.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean specifically Ossoff's office reached out to one of my coworkers who was on the original webinar and said, "Hey, like I saw your email in the chat and I just wanted to make sure that you guys were applying for this grant." So that's kind of cool.
yeah. Good.
also obligates us to apply, obliges us to apply.
Yeah. Like, well, if you
I guess
insist.
so. All right. Thanks for that update, Daniel.
Mhm.
And bridge improvement grant.
So this is you know, we did the planning one. We've got the construction bridge improvement grant. We're going to be applying for the bridge over the river.
Which bridge?
Um,
Which river?
yeah, sorry, over the loop actually. So this is
Okay.
Mitchell Bridge Road. We're going to be applying for this bridge replacement, Mitchell Bridge Road over the loop.
Right.
So it would kind of smooth out this approach so that it's not so, you know, S-curve. That's a pretty
Mm-hmm.
blind curb, and there's once again, no pedestrian facilities. And so
Long term, are there going to be any pedestrian facilities on Mitchell Bridge Road, though?
yes,
Once
so that is one of the T-SPLOST projects that we're currently working on with 2018, and then future 2023 funding is a multi-use path on Mitchell Bridge Road, and it basically goes from where the sidewalk ends, just past Ben Burton Park, and it comes down until it gets to this neighborhood, and then with the bridge over the river, we would then, or bridge over the loop, and we could then tie into the existing sidewalks here.
Okay. I mean, multi-use path and sidewalks are different, obviously, but okay.
But we would be able to get the multi-use path connection to at least here. That was paid for out of the Atlanta Highway,
Right.
T-SPLOST corridor funds.
Right.
So
And it would be nice because isn't Tallahassee Road is getting some improvements. So there's just going to be that stretch along Mitchell Bridge from Tallahassee Road where Calientitos? No, Senior Soul is,
so
to Ben Burton Park. And that may be a sidewalk, but it's not really a full facility, right?
Yeah, it's currently like an 8-foot sidewalk, which is enough to call it a multi-use path.
So
But I just,
that's where striping and signing, would be
yeah,
important so people know that it's okay to ride their bicycle on there. I normally would never ride on a sidewalk, right?
right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and 100%. I mean, we were looking at the engineering of this, and if you look at specifically at like this area,
Yeah.
um, for us to expand this sidewalk out an additional 2 feet,
Mhm.
you really get into, that is not the right way.
Kind of drops off into a ditch.
Yeah, it immediately drops off into a stream,
Right.
and it gets right into the buffer. Like the sidewalk is already within the buffer, and so it just gets real hairy real quickly.
Right. But
So
again, there may be ways to, either sign on the pavement itself or, put a stripe down the middle of it, dotted line down the middle of it, arrows to indicate direction of travel, you know, say, bikes allowed, or, in Europe, every path will have something at the beginning that has either a person walking or a bike or both. And it's very
right,
clear, what's allowed and what isn't. And I
yeah,
just,
and yeah,
anyway, I mean, that's another,
100%.
discussion for another time, I guess, but yeah, there's where it ends, right?
Hmm.
If there are places where it could be wide, and that would be nice. I'm sure the whole length isn't that ditch. It looks like that area is a little wider there, but
Yeah, it's basically, I mean, right here, it's more of a ditch. This creek is back there.
yeah.
Once you get up to this railing, that's actually where the stormwater comes straight into the creek. So it kind of bends back. So there's a little bit, basically up to that telephone pole. That's
Uh-huh.
as much as we could kind of do. So, and it
Yeah.
also is one of those things where it doesn't really help to add on a couple feet just to make it wider. You really have to rip it out and replace it. Otherwise, you're going to get weird settling and heaving and stuff like that.
Okay. All right. Makes
So,
sense. Thanks.
yeah,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay,
absolutely.
so that's where the bridge project is going to be if we get
Uh,
funded from that,
Yeah,
right?
down here. So there's two. One of them is for this. The other one is Fowler's Mill Bridge, which is currently out. So, and with that, I'm just going to ask for a minimum 4-foot wide paved shoulder um, to really just allow for connectivity over the bridge. Because that's something that that's like one of the facility types that's outlined in the bike friendly community.
So
This
to
is
be a 4-foot bike lane, delineated bike lane, is that all?
so what it would be is this is something that people are doing in like rural areas that is acceptable. It's a rideable and walkable surface basically. Um, so this is part of the rural design guide.
Mhm.
And you can see if there are rumble strips, those are it's the rumble strips are on the in between the car and the cyclist, and they go away when the cyclist needs to transition in and out, and you want to make sure there's room for cyclists to be able to transition intermittently.
Mhm.
And then it's also a minimum. You can't include that as part of the 4 feet. You do 4 feet on the outside of the rumble strip
Okay.
to the edge of pavement.
So
So
visually separated, but not physically separated.
it's a visually separated paved shoulder is what this one's called.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily, it works for collectors and highways in rural and suburban areas.
Hmm.
Um, and it's really preferred in areas where you've got faster than 25 miles an hour with higher road volumes, just because, and obviously it's not like this isn't like perfect solution, but it's definitely more than enough in a lot of places.
Well, I'll tell you, this is what much of rural Michigan has is a 4-foot wide paved shoulder. Sometimes there are rumble strips, which are actually helpful because, I've been riding my bike and seen on one of those where traffic is 55, 60 miles an hour. It's a highway, and the car will drift over and it hits the rumble strip and comes back in. So they can be your friend. But this is a very common treatment in rural Michigan where I am right now. And I'll say it's great. It's fine when it's 40 miles an hour. I feel pretty safe. When it's 60, 65 miles an hour, you feel, I try to avoid that. I don't think it's good. But Mitchell Bridge is what, in a 40-mile-an-hour range, something like that?
Yeah, 45,
45. Okay, yeah,
I
it's kind of
believe.
pushing it. But yeah.
Means people go
Okay.
up to
But luckily, like with some of the improvements that we're also proposing there, it'll slow speeds down, and ultimately, once you get the slower speeds and you lower the design speed, then it gets a lot easier to you know, go above
Okay.
or to get those speeds changed and lowered. So,
Okay.
yeah. Now, if y'all are good with the grant stuff, I can jump into some of what I've been looking at for the data
I'm
portion.
good with the grant stuff, and I am serious that I have to I have to go. I have to
That's
send
fine.
2 important emails before 5. So,
All right.
Okay. Thanks, Jake.
but yeah, let me know what you need from me in terms of grants. Even though I won't see you at bowling, you can always feel free to contact me.
Awesome.
Also, let us know if you're in the ACC league or not.
Yeah. I'm gonna get some info on that. I'll let you. I'll reach out.
Sounds good. Bye, guys.
All right. See ya. All right. So I sent over the tool to you.
So I didn't expect a 1.4 gigabyte file.
It
I expected
is.
a page that has a formula, you know? I mean,
Yeah. No, it is actually the tool. The
yeah,
full
I
one.
understand, but there's must be, okay, a formula where it's like equity times 5 plus um, proximity times 3, or there's some weighting that's
Mhm.
happening. That's my simple understanding of it, and that's, I think, the level of input. I was actually unable to download it. I was tethered on my phone, and I don't have 1.4
Oh,
gig of data to use this is
totally.
Sunday. And then I tried downloading it today, and it wouldn't. So um,
Not a problem.
I
Let
don't know.
me.
But if digging into it, there must be, you know, uh, th- when these things are rank ordered, they have to get into that rank order somehow. There must be some numeric value that gets assigned to each project. And how does that numeric value get generated is some sort of formula.
Yeah. So I know. So let's jump down to that portion.
Hmm.
Um, so these are the values that we're seeing. Um,
Okay.
so the public sidewalk to road ratio, for instance,
Mhm.
there's a formula to determine that, and the lowest ratio is a 10, low ratios are 8, high ratio is 6, highest ratio is a 4, right? And so this is probably divided into 0 to 25%, or whatever the ratio is, you divide it maybe equally. I don't know if that's equally distributed or like natural breaks or which formula style they're using. But let me,
So just to look at that, just as I look at this mathematically, you see that for the percent in poverty over 65 and the percent in poverty under 18, that range is lower. It goes from 2 to 8, whereas for public sidewalk road ratio bus coverage, it goes from 4 to 10. So those end up being made more important in the weighting. The public sidewalk to road ratio is going to have more weight in the formula than the percent in poverty, is what it looks
well,
like.
and also all
I'm
of
saying that's
these,
right or wrong. I'm just trying to
yeah,
understand this.
yeah, and they all get averaged out to give you the high, medium, and low here.
Right.
And that's what's compared to land use
Right.
down
Now,
here.
okay. Wait, I'm sorry. How does the high, medium, low, the 10.75, where does that come from?
So somehow we're getting from these numbers
Hmm.
to this one.
So I think, just at a sort of meta level, we have 6 characteristics. So those are for pedestrian. Those are the equity criteria. Um, there must be some way of, they may assign, okay, this is an area that has the lowest ratio, so it gets 10 points. But does the length of the project, so, if you have 2 blocks without sidewalks, compared to a stretch that's 1 mile without sidewalks, um, is the length of that included in the weighting?
Right, and that's where the ratio comes in, because
Okay.
this is
Then it doesn't matter if it's a ratio, although it doesn't matter, but it does matter. A project that's, a 1 mile seems like might be more important or have greater impact than fixing 2 blocks.
yeah, and I mean, and that's something where so let me show you. So this is the full data set. So this is currently being symbolized for the level of comfort.
Right.
And you can see it is every individual road segment as it's kind of populating in.
Sure.
Um, and for each of these road segments, if I select one, come on, let's see. Pull up the attribute table down here. So it goes, this is kind of where we have all the different things that I haven't completely got this worked out, but funding strategy, bike tier, ped tier, segment identifier, the name. So when we get further on, we got miles per hour, level of comfort, critical corridor, yes, no. And I think critical corridor, I think that ends up being like, yes, this is a critical corridor. And then there's another value that's maybe like, is it adjacent to a critical corridor? Like, does it touch it? Um, but that gets solved in the tool. There's existing facility, there's proposed facility. We've also got in here the pavement index score and that's where I'm like, if we're repaving a road, I can look at this data set and say, okay, well, here are the ones that are going to be repaved, and this is what it needs to be. And then right here, I've got sidewalk coverage existing and needs. So like, for instance, if we zoom in on this segment, so let's see, this is section of 2-lane road, and it shows that we have 2, which is both sides of the road have sidewalk, and then the needs are 2. So it's 100% coverage in this section. But yeah, as far, and I've got a few other, I mean, there's existing connectivity, bike only, bike pedestrian only, bike and pedestrian. MTP project is based on the make court stuff. I've got landscape surface zones. And then what I was going to do here, so I've got bike boulevard all the way over to signed bike route. So these are new fields. And what this is saying is, so we're using basically this tool. So if you click on the bike boulevard, this is a really good representation. So there's this graph. Oh man, of course. I'll just use this one. So the way that this chart shows the volume and the speed, and it says here's preferred and here's potential. There's other treatments that are within this. So if we look, for instance, at bike lane, you can see bike lanes on roads faster than 40 miles an hour are potential, but they're not preferred.
Right.
They're also above 55, not recommended, period.
Yeah. Above 30, they shouldn't be recommended.
Right. I agree.
Basically. Yeah.
But you can also see that there's a lower volume range here that it really doesn't need to be bike lanes on roads that are slower than 25 with 3,000
Sure.
vehicles a day.
Sure.
So what I'm building here is essentially, so this dark green area is all of the preferred
Mm-hmm.
treatments. So
Right.
bike lanes less than 25 is preferred. Anything over is it's doable, but it's not preferred. And
Sure.
so this is our inventory sheet of like, this is, here are roadways and the percentage of the network that they make up. And then we can basically inventory our entire network this way. And this is how Bike Friendly Communities is doing it. So we've got protected bike lanes or cycle tracks. We've got
Sure.
grade separated raised cycle tracks.
And as the speed goes up.
Yeah.
Right.
So then where it gets moved into the data is I can basically within this data set, I'll be able, where it says yes right now, eventually, like based on that road segment, we'll be able to say that it is either preferred, potential, or not recommended. And then we would have that for every road segment in Athens and every version of bike infrastructure. And then we could basically build out a matrix that says, okay, for this road, the options are, bike lanes and or wide paved shoulder. And then we could easily get that and take it to mayor and commission and say, here's
Right.
our recommendation is to do bike lanes in this area, or really our recommendation is to do wide paved shoulder for these reasons so that we could save some money but create safe space.
Right.
Now, that's just in building the network part of it. So there's building the network in the Athens in Motion plan. So the main map that I think we've always looked at is that prioritization map, which is
Mhm.
this one right here. But this isn't really actually a master plan of the project. This is just the tiering. The actual network map is a few pages earlier. And I'd like to make this one a little more robust.
Mhm.
So this is the proposed regional network.
So it'd be nice if in the, we've talked about the next version of the plan being online rather than a physical document. So this would be an example where in an online document, someone could click on that and they could zoom in on various areas and, make it more interactive. Is that what you're thinking about as well?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But like
Now,
as a step beyond, I'd like to also show like here is where these colors are multi-use paths. These colors are bike lanes. These are buffered bike lanes. Like actually symbolize where the recommended projects are. And
mhm.
then really rather than making this main map that shows the tiering, um, up here, that the main map could be that project network, and then we could just highlight all the tier ones
Mhm.
because really the tier ones are the only ones that matter.
Right, right. I mean, I think that they should be either separate maps, tier one, tier two, and tier three, and that the color coding and the type
Mhm.
of line and all that could indicate some other characteristics. Because, like you said, if it's tier two or three, it's at least unlikely to happen. I did want to talk a little bit. Is topography part of this formula that is in the prioritization? So, for example, Millage and Prince to me should be rated more highly because they are not only critical corridors, but they're also flat. And so they're
Yeah.
easier for people to bike and walk. North Avenue, frankly, is a good example of one that is quite steep and challenging topographically. That's going to be, an issue.
That's a good point. I mean, that almost gets into level of comfort,
A little
but
bit.
not like it might be covered within the level of comfort
Level of
analysis.
fitness, maybe level of
Yeah,
fitness,
true.
you know,
Yeah.
not so much comfort. And I think,
Hmm.
everyone's fine going down a hill, and there you get into a little bit of a level of comfort if you go too fast. But going up a hill like that would be challenging for a lot of folks, most folks. And our goal, I think, should always be how can we create facilities that are comfortable for all road users, not just the lycra clad fit 20-year-olds.
Absolutely, because they're gonna ride in the roads. No
matter what.
already, no matter
Yeah.
what.
So in terms of, so we have these 6 equity criteria. We have land use, which is being close to parks and schools.
We need to add race in for equity.
How would we add that?
So,
Race or ethnicity or both?
yeah, probably both. And I would point to what the national, let's see, um, areas of persistent, yeah. So Ray's grant created a tool, and this is
Okay.
being used by
Yeah, that makes sense.
every,
Persistent poverty, historically disadvantaged. That's, I think, what we're looking
yeah,
for.
uh-huh,
More than just race or ethnicity alone. It's areas where
absolutely.
we have historically that's so that'll be useful. I think that and would there be a way to incorporate that into our prioritization then?
Yeah, because what we have here is, and I'll show you, this is basically
Mhm.
the entire country, and we can zoom all the way down to the tract level.
Mhm.
And so you can see within Athens, um, when you click on one, so that what's symbolized right now is just it's a transportation disadvantage census tract, yes or
Mhm.
no, and so the orange ones are yes. But really, this data has historically disadvantaged community,
Mhm.
transportation disadvantage indicator, health disadvantage indicator,
Sure.
economy
Sure.
disadvantage,
Okay.
equity disadvantage, resilience, and environmental disadvantage.
Right. So will you have to choose from among those, like which one or ones to use, I guess?
Yeah, so I guess that's kind of the question that we need to discuss. Kind of how much of this do we want? Like, there's an equity disadvantage indicator, but we would really need to dig into their methodology. I mean, the other thing here is that they're looking at tract level at the national level, but
Mhm.
could we get down to block? Like,
Well, right, exactly. These seem like fairly large areas,
yeah,
census tracts are big, in the scheme of things. And there's a lot of variation within those census tracts, I'm sure.
yeah. So I think it would be helpful for us to dig in. Um, my data intern, one thing that I was thinking could be helpful is we are developing her project list right now.
Hmm.
And one of the things, I'm not sure if we have it in our budget to pay for it, but if Athens in Motion could pay for a certain number of hours for her to work on this level of data stuff, um, from the General Commission meeting, um, that
Yeah.
could be pretty helpful.
So let me get back. Can I, let me just pull up a spreadsheet here.
Yeah.
Let me, because I'm still not, you know, completely comfortable that I understand what's going on here. So let me just share this and can you stop? We'll stop sharing content
Yeah.
as soon as you start sharing. Okay, so here we go.
Perfect.
So yeah, so what I'm thinking is, we have these general areas. We have equity is one of them. We have land use, I think was one of them. What was the third one? Was it
Another land use. Um, so the first land use is schools and parks.
okay.
And the next one is commercial and high density residential.
And so we are prioritizing then high density residential and commercial, basically, um, projects, pedestrian and bicycle projects will be prioritized if they're in proximity to those things.
Yeah,
Correct.
if it's within an eighth of a mile, they get 8 points. A quarter mile's 5, and a half mile's 3.
Okay. And those make sense. What's the other category? I'm sorry to not have it in front of me.
Um, so yeah, so we got land use, and then we've got transit,
Right.
and we've got critical corridors,
Okay.
public input, and then for bike specific, we have safety, existing facilities, and connectivity.
Okay, and that's what I was wondering about. Where does that come in? Because, clearly you want to build infrastructure that people are going to use, and something can tick off some of the other boxes, but if it's part of nothing to anything, it seems like that should be particularly important for, bicycle facilities, perhaps less so for pedestrian, although obviously it's still important. Then I'm wondering, okay, so how does this stuff get weighted? So you get, let's say, 10 points. So you had this 10-7-5 formulation,
Yeah,
right?
so that one is equity is 10-7-5.
Okay. And what is the other ones? What are the other ones? Like, for example, are they the same, or I assume they're
They're
different?
different. So parks and schools is 10-7-5.
Okay.
Um, commercial high density is 8-5-3.
Okay. So that gets less weight.
Yeah.
Definitely. And so
Um,
looking at these, so do each of these ultimately, they get, so let's say you have project one here, and let's say it gets 5 points for this, 7 points for this, 8 points for this. Is it simply additive, um,
let's
at some
let's
level?
fi- let's do this a little bit more because let's do 10-7-5 on transit because that is one of my questions. So that's going to be 10-7-5, and then critical corridors is 8-5. And
Okay.
then public input is 10-7-5. And then safety is 10-7-5-3.
Safety is 10. So safety, so bike, so that's separate. Bike,
Yes, sorry, yeah,
safety,
bike safety is 1,
10-7-5, and then it's actually 3.
3. And then existing facilities is the next one,
Right.
and that's 4-3-2.
Okay. So that to me is, I'd like to discuss at least. And then there was a third one, existing
Yeah.
facilities and
And
connectivity.
then bike connectivity, which is 10-7-5.
Yeah, okay. When it says existing facilities, does that mean what's already there on that stretch of
It's
road?
the level of comfort. So if it's a level of comfort 4, then it gets a 4, a 3 gets a 3, 2 gets a 2.
So the worse the level of comfort, the higher the priority.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so this is, yeah, okay, okay. This is, I'm finally getting some understanding of how this works.
Yeah, no, I this is helpful for me too. So, and we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the
That-
high, if you score high in everything, what does the high add up to? Can you do a sum under that? 80.
Yeah.
Why is it
It's
80?
odd that we have 4 for safety. I don't quite understand why that would be different. And what it does, it interestingly, it really disadvantages land use, the commercial and high density residential, which to me is pretty important. We want to be able to get people biking and walking into in those corridors. That seems where you want, in particular, to have good facilities, because that's more inner core, more where people are going to be walking and biking to work or to school. And then the existing facilities worse. So basically that has very little impact. So if the level of comfort is very bad, if the level of comfort is, for a Lexington Road or something like that level of comfort, it's
Yeah.
not going to help much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this, it's, other than the bike existing facilities, it's more or less roughly equally weighting everything else. Most other things are 10-7-5, a couple are 8-5 or 8-5-3. So
Hmm.
it's basically putting all these things on a more or less equal footing. And so that's one question is, do we think these things are equally important? Or would we value the transit facilities less than equity, for example. I'm not saying I just picked that, out of the blue,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
because
Well,
right
and
now,
honestly, transit's kind of double counted because within equity, one of those things
yeah, a lot of
is
it's transit. Yeah.
transit. Like it says, let's see, the bus service area coverage is one of the equity considerations. And so areas with more bus service are given higher priority.
Yeah. So
Um,
perhaps I'm just making some notes here.
and then
You're right. It is double counting it. Maybe we shouldn't, and maybe
actually,
it shouldn't be weighted quite as highly. This is the kind of discussion that would be good to think about. And I also wonder how other communities have prioritized, and are there some factors that we aren't thinking about? I mentioned one, which was topography not considered, and that seems for bike at least important.
hmm safety, like actual bike crashes are not considered.
Right.
Um, and actually we've also got population community by public transit under equity as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, um,
So I think the transit is something to be incorporated somewhere, but it shouldn't get 3 votes, essentially.
right. I
You know?
feel like transit should have a plan, like we should have a plan that focuses on last mile. Like I almost wonder if we should have like this facility is part of a last mile connection for transit or last mile connection for schools or
Yeah. Well,
parks.
well, does transit, I mean, I know some people do put their bikes on the front of the bus, but that seems like a relatively small number of users per day, whereas a lot of people who are on a bus then walk somewhere, right? That's
Right.
the typical thing. So it seems, should transit be one of the factors for bike, or should it just be pedestrian?
And I would say maybe both, but different weights. I can see that
Yeah.
being different weights.
Or higher for pedestrian
Yeah.
and bike, right? So,
Yeah.
okay. Now,
And
bike
then
safety, that's the level of comfort?
bike safety
That's
is
existing facilities.
no, okay, so bike safety, that one was really weird. Um, Categories of bike facilities were developed to score the proposed bike networks. So basically, this is the proposed facility. So if it received a proposed separated facility, it got a 10. That's shared use path or multi-use path. Just a fully separated facility was a 10. Buffered facility is a 7. Delineated is a 5, and shared facility is a 3, which means sharrows.
Okay. So if the facility that's proposed is safer, is more separated, then it gets a higher priority rating.
Yes.
Okay, got it. I'm just trying to understand this.
But then so I think that my concern there is what it does is it moves all of the most expensive projects to the very top of the priority.
Yeah, because true. Although, I mean, I think when I think about the corridors, certainly, we talk about Prince a lot and Millage.
Yeah.
Those are used a lot because by pedestrians and bikes because they are flat and they are important, you know. And they're
Yeah.
and so yeah, they are potentially more expensive for that reason. But I can't think of any corridors that would get more use if they were properly done.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially East Campus Road is another one that I don't know if that's anywhere on our priority list, but that's always struck me as one that had potential. Um,
Yes, that
Other
one
thing is,
is
are rail trails or potential rail with trail considered in any of these? Do they get rated?
kind of, but not really. Like they did some of our Greenway stuff, but that was another issue is that the way they built this tool
Mhm.
really in their mind it focused on right of way. And then they laid in the Greenway stuff and they said, okay, well here are the Greenway connections. But I don't know that they actually ran the Greenway connections through the tool the same way.
For example, there's the old Georgia Railroad bed, which is, I believe, owned by the university now, and I don't know what
Hmm.
they plan to do with it.
It's owned by
But
an affiliate, basically a separate, I think it's one of their land banking arms.
gotcha. Yeah.
So it's
Okay.
not
Kind of like
actually UGA.
Research Foundation or Athletic Association or something like that, but it's
I
an
think.
entity affiliated with them, controlled by them.
Yeah.
So that would be a really great corridor for bikes and pedestrians to go from downtown all along campus, right?
Yeah.
And and that's not nowhere on any of these plans or maps. Should it be, or
The
is it
closest
just
is like South Millage, Project 19 is a tier one, but then it stops once you get to Riverbend Road. It doesn't
right?
show anything past that. So, and what that and that means they just full on didn't even have it as a project. So there's kind of multiple levels here where I think we need to reevaluate the projects and like where they are,
Right.
and we really need to look at like the entire road network. And there are some facilities where we will say the preferred option here is to leave it unmarked local road, right? But there's some options on the local roads will be like, this is a cut through. It's been identified as a cut through and it's a pretty flat route, so this should be a bike boulevard.
Hmm.
And like and then we can have those as little breakout sections earlier on. But then I think we should really look at all of Whitehall as it goes out to the county, all of, these main, Danielsville Road, it just stops right now. Hull Road isn't even considered. US 29 isn't considered on here. Um, East Campus Road isn't considered. There's a project on East Campus, Project 97. So basically, just like this was a huge improvement over what they had when they developed this. But I think now we've been able to get enough data and do enough work and have staff dedicated to this to where we can really make this thing shine a lot better. And
Yeah.
so step one is identify the new project boundaries and scopes and numbers. And then I think step two is to also revisit the criteria that we've talked about today, and then rerun all those projects through that criteria.
But not only existing projects, but should we be looking at new projects like East
Absolutely.
Campus
Yeah.
Road, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So not just existing, like the easiest thing for me to do right now would be to take our existing projects and scopes and run them through the tool as it's currently built. And I would just update the data to say, well, we have census 2020 data now, and here's the new park data, and here's the new commercial zone data. Like I
Right.
could fill in those things and it would just rerun it with the same weights. But I
I think
think,
Stephen was talking about doing that first, and then um,
yeah. But I talked to him after that, and I think he's more on board with just doing this because he's like, actually, what you're saying makes a lot of sense.
mhm.
I think we could, you know,
There's also I think at one level, when we look around, and if we, got a bunch of people together and thought, okay, what are if you had to do, one project, what would you do? And um, I would do millage, and other
mhm,
people might say I would do print, whatever. But there are certainly some projects that seem obvious to be should that it seems obvious to me that they should be high priorities. Um, and so if this formula comes through and doesn't rank them very highly, that would make me think maybe there's something wrong with the formula, or at least, I mean, I do this when I'm testing a search strategy for
mhm.
medical literature. If I don't find an article that I know it should have found, I know there's something wrong with my search strategy, kind of thing.
Well, and their way around that is the public input piece. That
Yeah.
1075, that represents people's opinions of what should be prioritized.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's part of it. I guess
But
what I'm
yeah,
saying is
you're right.
if it spits out some projects that you look at them and go, that's doesn't make any sense. It's a steep
Yeah,
hill. No one would ever ride their bike there. No one lives there to walk there. It doesn't connect to anything. How did that get highly rated?
yeah.
That's where sometimes looking at the outliers that don't make sense can help you refine the priorities, the weights, that kind of thing.
And that's where I think when we revisit the project numbers and we say, okay, here are the new projects and the project
Yeah.
bounds and the
Yeah.
recommended facilities, then that's saying like, okay, here's a steep hill. Like, does this need to be in, you know, like the example I'm going to use is over there, um,
So when I look at this,
Westchester.
you know, current usage isn't in here, I don't think. So
It's
basically,
not.
if you have a street where a lot of people are using it already for walking, and it's kind of crappy facility, but they're walking anyway, they're telling you voting with their feet or voting with their bikes, that should be, if this is where people want to go and want to be safe, we should be prioritizing that, I think. And I
Yeah,
don't think that's in there. So,
it's not.
um, where people are already walking and biking.
Go ahead with the rail trail, rail with trail. Go ahead and put in easement trails with that too.
Say again?
Easement trails?
Easement trails, yeah. Would that be something like the power line easement?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've seen other communities are starting to do that more now.
And Georgia Power's more on board with it now.
Yeah, yeah.
It's suddenly like, oh, well, if there is funding out there, then cool.
That would be, going from the existing original Greenway over to where, over to Barber Street, basically. You could almost get that far. You'd have to go
Hmm.
over, there'd be one bridge, but
Yeah.
anyway, okay. All right, so, well,
And then,
this has been helpful for me because I've always had this thing sort of swirling around. It really helps me to put up some numbers on it, and yeah,
yeah,
and start to think about what's not there. So where people already topography, to consider topography.
where people are going.
Yeah. Now, when it says
Um,
schools and parks, does a university count as a school?
I think so. And the other thing here is that is a weird one because it doesn't separate them out. If there is a school and park within, it's not looking at park like access, right? So there's like basically if there are 5 parks and 3 schools within an eighth of a mile of a project, that gets the same rating as if there is a school that has or a project that has 1 school within an eighth mile.
Huh.
Once you meet that minimum threshold of 1, then that satisfies the desire. And what I think, which this is something that I was working on over in park planning,
Mm-hmm.
but we never finished it. But really, there are a lot of tools. Park Index is a really cool. There's a research paper about it, but they basically did it. You can do an analysis of the access to your parks, and so you look at here are the parks and their entrances, and then you do a network analysis, and you can then see everyone. Here are here's everyone who's within an eighth mile, within a half mile, and within a mile or something like that. Quarter, half, maybe eighth, quarter, half, and then um, that zone gets access. You can say these people have access to a park, but then if it overlays with multiple zones, then that's better access. Or maybe you have one park within a half mile and another one within another quarter. And then like what you're not getting though is the really quality of the park because you know Ben Burton, let's say you're just up the street from Ben Burton. Well, it might be that you want to go to a park to throw a football and
Yeah.
play a game or play basketball, and you're not going to do that. So then,
Well, it seems like the parks and schools are different, right?
mhm,
So there are different kinds. So you have, differences between schools and parks not considered. So, elementary school versus high school. Seems to me high school would be in some ways more important because you've got no, for biking at least, because elementary kids aren't going to ride their bike to school generally, whereas high school kids might.
yeah,
And parks are different, depending on the facilities that are there. A park that has like in East Athens or the one north of Athens that has football fields and soccer fields seems like a very high, much higher priority than one that's like Ben Burton or some pocket park, right?
Yeah, and I mean, in the case of Tallahassee Forest, for instance, the way that it's currently doing it is they'll build a buffer off of the park boundaries, which if you look within an eighth mile of Tallahassee Forest, that means Cleveland Road is near a park when there's absolutely no connectivity to that,
Right.
because it's really the entrance is way up on Tallahassee, and so I think just getting more specific with, you know, we do have the data from Parks Department now for entrances. There's pedestrian entrances versus vehicular.
Right. It makes, I mean, proximity
Yeah,
to an entrance makes sense. Proximity to the back of the park where you can't get in doesn't matter.
right. Yeah,
Right. So
absolutely.
yeah, this is just interesting to think about this. And I think we're on the same mind more or less about, what should be incorporated. So yeah. And I
Yeah,
think then there's the more global weighting of should these things, 10, 10, 8, should these weightings be tweaked in some way? Is the
right,
existing, I'm still not quite sure what to make of this existing facility. So you get a little bit of a bump if it's a really unsafe place, but it's really not enough to make it. Some places are never going to be made safe. Atlanta Highway is never going to be safe for biking, I don't think. I really don't
right.
think, unless they blow it up, you know.
Well, but I could tell you that that is a really high, that's people do bike out there, and they're biking on the sidewalks or in the like turn
Mhm.
lanes against traffic because that's all they can do.
In Atlanta
Um,
Highway?
yeah.
Well, I've never
Um,
seen that, but okay.
yeah, we did it when we did it was on Broad Street, and there was a lot of people going between basically the extent of the road safety audit that we did. Like we started right around where Hojo is, and we
Yeah.
walked in over to where Temez Barbecue is.
Yeah.
And along that corridor, we saw
Yeah. I have seen. Yeah.
5 cyclists, and we saw plenty of people walking. And then I went and I was talking with Bike Athens, and he's right there on West Broad, and he's like, "Oh yeah, these guys come in all the time with completely wrecked bikes where it looks like it's been driven over, and it's like, hey, my brakes are messed up, and it's like, I just have to give you a new bike, like,
Mhm.
you know,
Hey,
um,
thinking back to that, and I don't want to go too far off topic, but thinking back
mhm,
to that, reconnecting communities grant, it seems like West Broad would be a great example of a road that has, a strode really that has divided a historically disadvantaged and black neighborhood there. If you think about either side of West Broad,
yeah,
like between, kind of up near from downtown out to the Hancock intersection.
absolutely,
That might
yeah,
be, and how do you make that safer? How do you make the crossings better? How do you slow traffic down?
hmm
Or what do you need to do there? Anyway, that was just popped into my head when we were thinking about West Broad.
no, yeah, that's a good point. I'll make sure to include that. Um,
I mean, that's the most clear division of historically disadvantaged neighborhood that I can think of, other than maybe
yeah.
North. North is already covered.
Did we put historically disadvantaged in the notes to add that?
Yeah, good point. So that would add historically disadvantaged neighborhoods to equity criterion.
Yeah, and I mean, in addition to that, it's like so let's see, we got historically disadvantaged community, transportation disadvantage. So yeah, this is where I think I would like to figure out their methodology for this and apply it to our block groups or blocks, not block groups. And then we could get historically disadvantaged.
Mhm.
I don't know. I guess I'm curious what transportation disadvantage indicator is.
Yeah, yeah, I
Um,
don't know.
we probably don't need health disadvantage. I mean, I guess these could be helpful. Like all of them could be helpful in their own way.
Mhm.
There's economy disadvantage, equity disadvantage,
Is
that
there a
should be
global?
included.
I mean, is there a global one?
Um,
I mean, you don't have to you don't have to answer that now,
yeah,
but it seems to me like maybe there's some global measure or some combination of those equity disadvantaged, historically disadvantaged, and transit disadvantaged, and average
Yeah.
those out or something.
Yeah, it's I think there's a lot. I think there's also, it references the Justice 40 initiative. So
Yeah, so I didn't know what that was, but yeah, there are relatively
Mhm.
few census tracts. I mean, you said you were interested in getting down to the block level, but the raise data that you had was just for the census tract, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm looking right now to see because it might also be they have, because that dashboard was for transportation disadvantage. I'm looking through their apps right here. Shoot. Okay. Well, let me try a different link. I'm hoping I can see what other ones they made, because maybe they did the analysis already on the block level.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna share my screen real quick.
Yeah. And we're over time a little bit. I've got to go in about 10 or 12 minutes,
Okay.
but
Yeah, absolutely. So they've got it's blinking, but okay. Let me see if I can sign in. I don't know why. Oh, yeah, okay. So, yeah, so like this right here, this is the raise grant, and it links to this dashboard. And when I click on this dashboard at the top, you can see it is transportation disadvantaged tracks. So it references this Justice 40 initiative, Equity Justice 40.
Mhm.
Maybe there's some additional. Interesting. Look at this. Like, it's got all the NOFOs and stuff too. Maybe there's something in their website. I could try reaching out to them to see if they have a resource for really being able to download the data itself, and then I can dig into the data, because
Right.
that would be preferred. But worst case scenario, we can always redo the analysis ourselves with our, stuff. Yeah, I guess the final thing is, as we get into, if you think of any other metrics, or, I mean, this is live stream, so if anybody out there thinks of any
Mhm.
other metrics that we are not
Yeah, absolutely.
considering, I mean, essentially what we've got is the blue is for both bike and pedestrian criteria, and then gray is for bike only, green is for pedestrian only.
Oh, safety and connectivity, we didn't add those to our spreadsheet, did we?
Right, not for pedestrian.
Right.
Yeah, because that basically what you had there was for just bikes, and so we would need to
Okay,
add
so
these two.
yeah, let me just add let me just do that while we're talking,
Okay.
because okay, actually I should have
It
done
ends up being very similar. Like the safety is the exact same thing on both. Or no, existing facilities up here is the safety, down here is the level of comfort. And
sorry,
connectivity
I'm
is just
not
the
looking at it because I'm typing on my spreadsheet.
No worries.
Is that a 10.75 for both of those?
No, the safety is a 432
Huh,
level of comfort, and
yeah,
then the connectivity is just 7. So yes, no.
okay.
Um, you know, I think there's a lot of room for expanding some of these data sets and enhancing the analysis. So
Yeah.
we can continue. I think, we'll be digging into this deeper each week,
And I'll save this in my dates
or
and
each month.
data and grants folder.
Excellent. And once we get a good, I think we can. I mean, we're going to be giving the updates for grants and data at the Athens in Motion meeting. So we'll be able to hear from the rest of the commission on this. I think, we've been able to dig in to a lot of the details, but maybe just let Lauren know if you want a little extra time in the agenda to discuss this.
To discuss these ideas that we've built into that we've been discussing here.
Yeah, so I guess first question is, do you want to go ahead and like we can update them within the 15 minutes that you have usually, or we can, I mean, we can do that, but do you want to keep narrowing this down and get something a little more put together to bring
Yeah, I
to
think so.
them?
I
Okay,
think it's a little too early. I mean, I think we
perfect,
could present what the current criteria are and then ask people to send us their ideas for additional criteria.
perfect.
Maybe that would work.
Yeah, I like
Okay.
that. All right,
So let me
well,
send this file to you just so you have a copy of it.
perfect. Yeah. Send me the link on the Athens in Motion on the Google Drive, and then we could just, or is that is that an Excel file?
Yeah, it's an actual
Okay,
Excel file.
never mind. Yeah, send me the file.
You can always just copy paste it into a document on the shared drive. That's
Yeah, and we can I can upload that and
yeah,
get it
I
into.
do that anyway, so people can add their suggestions. Yeah, we could even have a link. You could put this into the shared folder, and then people could just, you know, go to a link and add their own notes.
Yeah,
I'll
awesome.
call that ideas. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I
All right.
guess we look at commercial high density residential. I don't know how much we want to get into like other land uses, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was starting to think about that a little. Sorry, I'm in the direct sunlight right now. I'm trying to
oh, you're
get
fine.
the sun. I
You
spent
know,
4 days on a boat in the Chesapeake Bay over the weekend, and ice got a lot of sun.
yeah,
My
I'd be.
facial recognition on my phone wouldn't recognize me because my,
That's
my
amazing.
skin color had changed to
Uh,
bright red.
that's amazing.
Um, yeah, so okay, good. So that sounds good. I'm glad I had a chance to have some time to really talk this through, and I feel much more comfortable with the direction on this, that we do realize that there are some, limitations and things that aren't being considered that we'd like to consider. And, instead of level of comfort, maybe actually having some actual safety data. Usage, I think we're going to have some usage data now from the streetlight and some of these other data sources. So knowing where people are going seems like should be a really important thing to consider. And
Really should. Yeah.
yeah,
I
so
mean,
anyway.
because I think big picture, if we got $1 billion tomorrow, that'd be great, but we're not. So how do we build out our network? And to me, it always comes back to it's always more effective to fill in gaps
Mhm.
and make a really well connected network
Yep.
rather than expanding out and picking these fragments all over.
I
And
couldn't
so,
agree more. Couldn't agree
yeah,
more. And success breeds success. And
yep,
so when when you create connectivity, people start to use it, and then people see people using it and say, "Hey, maybe I should use it." And then there's more
mhm.
support for expanding it further. I think. I mean, I think that
And
that's
then you end up in situations where people may be a little more willing to park at park and rides. It's like, well, I live out on Cherokee Road, but I'd like to utilize the bike network in town more. Maybe I can just go up and park at the Okokonee Street park and ride and then bike
Mhm.
from there. And then eventually we can, build out some of those larger,
Yeah.
further networks. So
When are you going to build the bridge or the tunnel at the loop where Lexington crosses the loop? When is that going to happen?
I have no idea.
I still hope for a safer crossing there. It is currently a ridiculously unsafe crossing that doesn't even,
yeah,
with those slip lanes and no way to, bike across it. It's just,
and it's one of those things where I was just looking at the most recent draft and they're putting in a multi-use path on the south side that goes from the Greenway over to Barnett Shoals.
wait, say again, Greenway?
From the Greenway at Waffle House
Okay.
on the south side of Lexington Road, to the intersection of Barnett Shoals and Lexington.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, oh, I didn't know they added that in. But then like there,
Start picturing it. That would go across the loop though, wouldn't it? From the Waffle House?
it would go under the loop. Yeah.
Okay.
So am I still sharing my screen? No. So, and this kind of, it's still somewhat relevant,
Yeah.
but the version that I saw, and I can't always guarantee that I'm seeing the most recent thing, but basically this greenway trailhead here, I'm gonna switch it to aerial.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if you can use your cursor or something, but I'm at the Waffle House now.
Yeah, so at the Waffle House, basically along the road, they're putting in a 10-foot multi-use path along the south side,
Okay.
all the way to Barnett Shoals.
Okay.
And then what they're doing is this is going to be a straight on crosswalk straight across from the trail. So there's
Mhm.
not the slip lanes and stuff, which
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, awesome. Like that's better. It's
Yes.
not great. But then the issue I have with it is when you get down here, they are creating two right turn lanes. The right one is a slip lane that carries all the way through to here. And the left one is a slip lane that then has merging traffic coming in from here onto Barnett Shoals.
Hmm.
And what they're doing is they're routing the multi-use path down, so you have to cross two slip lanes. There's a multi-use path on the southern side of those slip lanes, and then you have to cross those slip lanes again
Yeah.
here to get onto this section of
Right.
trail. And I'm like, why not go ahead and just do a pedestrian island across here, do the double slip lanes on the outside of that protected space, and then those cars can keep moving without having more, you know,
Mm.
pedestrian conflict areas. So
Hmm.
we can't fix all of it, and like it's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, it's better, but then also the bike lane here, they're merging the bike lane into the crosswalk, and then you have to like
Mhm.
get over across the crosswalk to be able to get onto the multi-use path.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So there's
Well, there's a bike lane here, isn't there? A bike lane on the west side of Lexington or Barnett Shoals? I'm sorry.
yeah, on Barnett Shoals, it's actually they're on both sides, but
Yeah,
it
you
kind
could
of
just,
dies off.
yeah, if you're coming, right. Okay. If you're heading into town, you'd have to cross over Barnett Shoals and
So
get on that.
this is yeah, so
Well, it's
it's
interesting. I'm not sure.
personally I would love to just have basically an on-ramp for the bikes to be able to get onto the Firefly Trail up here
Yep.
and just go whoop.
Yep. Well, that's quite an uphill.
Yeah, but with the way that they're doing all the grading here,
Yeah.
you could really you could ride that contour
Mm-hmm.
and potentially
Mm-hmm.
you could do it at a sustainable grade, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it is definitely quite a bit though. You may have to do some switchbacks.
Yeah, I was
So
on in Italy, and we were at the river level, and then it went up quite a bit, and there were like a series of 7 bicycle switchbacks,
wow.
and we had our panniers on and everything. It was quite a hill.
Yeah. And that's the closest that we have to that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 Right. Um,
Excellent.
okay. Good. Well, thanks, Daniel, again for going above and beyond. You're doing great work. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking time to help me brainstorm some stuff because it's
Yeah, the
always
brainstorming is always fun, and I think we came up with some important things. And so yeah, so in our next Athens in Motion meeting, which is that next? When is it? It's the third week,
the
isn't it, of the
end
month?
of, yeah, fourth.
Fourth. Okay.
But I
So we got a
might
little
have
time. Yeah.
to schedule it for the week after that because I'll be at
Right.
a conference.
Right. Right. Okay. Okay.
Um,
So
so
that gives us a little time to noodle over this a little bit more
yeah,
and maybe come up with some more specifics around this. So, yeah, I'll dig back into the Athens in Motion plan and those prioritization, and I may work on that spreadsheet a little bit. If you do create a version of that spreadsheet online, in whatever Google Drive or whatever, then just let me know and I can do it there instead.
Awesome. Yeah, I will.
Okay, great. Got a B. B.
All right. Okay.
See
Good
ya.
fun.
Adjourn the meeting. I both
right.
move and second that we adjourn the meeting.
I approve.
See you later, man.